Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Rules Report. I'm Ryan Lester, and thank you for joining us for episode 63, where tonight we'll give you our analysis on Wolverhampton Wanderers 1, Aston Villa 0, do the Man United preview, take your questions, and introduce our new game, Who Am I?, where I'll be giving clues about ex-Wolves players, and my two pundits will be fastest finger, see who wins it first. The podcast would be impossible without my wonderfully talented guest tonight with club captain Nocky, and of course we are delighted to be joined by BBC WM's Steve Herman. Now Tyler was supposed to be on, but due to a family engagement he couldn't, or others would say he's on the 36th paragraph of writing his apology to Toti Gomez. Before we go into the football, Steve, congratulations on your half marathon achievement. I guess you've got a few words to say on that.
Yeah, just wanted to say very quickly, if anyone's not aware, it's quite fitting to sort of say this on a Wolves podcast because I launched a challenge earlier on this year, which started with the Wolves 10K, which started and finished at Molineux. I then did a 10-mile run, and then I finished it off, this challenge, with the Great Birmingham Run, my first ever half marathon. I hit the wall with 3 miles to go, but managed to crawl over the finish line. Most importantly, raised a lot of money, which I'm happy to say, for Speech and Language UK. I think a lot of people who follow this podcast on Twitter will follow me as well and know about my son Eddie and his speech language communication needs. I know it's a subject that Tyler's passionate about as well. And I'm delighted to say that as it stands, it was going to be a final total, but I'm told there's still money coming in. So as it stands, £2,812.
Oh, wow.
Is going to go to Speech and Language UK, which is going to fund their hotline, advice and support for families and children with their speech, language and communication needs. And as a podcast that's now on audio form on Spotify, you know how important it is to speak and communicate. So, thank you to everybody, because I know a lot of Wolves fans were amongst the people who donated to that cause. So thank you.
Congratulations, Steve, mate. Brilliant work, mate. Well done. Brilliant cause as well. From one brilliant thing to another fantastic thing, Nocky, you was at Molineux on Saturday to witness the delights of Wolverhampton Wanderers 1, Aston Villa 0. Talk us through your thoughts on that game. And just for anyone in case that's wondering, that's watching, that's Craig Dawson sat behind Nocky this evening, if you're wondering what that brick wall is.
Difficult game. I think we knew it would be a difficult game. It's we're up against a team who are playing really well, high up in the league, challenging for Europe. So it was always going to be difficult. I think they'd lost 1 in 11 coming into this one, but we were really organised. We were disciplined. We got the early goal, which I think was absolutely vital. We just had a really good shape about us, and they did create a couple of chances. There was a chance for Ollie Watkins that he really should have scored, and then a fantastic save from Jose Sarr. We had the conversation: should we keep him in the team? That's why we should keep him in the team, because he's capable of doing that in these big games. So it was a hard game. I think I couldn't have complained if it had been a draw, but absolutely delighted to get the win and to guarantee our safety, almost put a stopper in their European hopes. It was a good afternoon. And it was a good atmosphere as well, which is something that we've not had every game this season. So that was nice.
Absolutely. Steve, obviously you watched the game as well. It was a weird sort of build up to the game when obviously you always want to beat your local rivals, but there didn't feel quite as much needle as there has been with Wolves Villa over probably since Steve Bruce started things off like 5 or 6 years ago. But as soon as that goal went in, it all came flooding back.
Yeah, I think, say what you want about it. Wolves fans might be sceptical. Villa fans certainly are sceptical about how much it means. I was watching the game with an Aston Villa fan who's a close friend, Hyed, and he wasn't happy at all, safe to say. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, Wolves did what they had to do, didn't they? They got the goal, and then they were resolute. Nocky's background just before summed it up perfectly. It was just an absolute brick wall just put there, and Villa couldn't get past it. I have to say, I was surprised in a way because with my BBC Radio WM hat on, Villa's the team that I've seen the most this season in person. I've commentated on a fair few games, and I have to say that I did the Villa Newcastle game where they won 3-0 Villa, and that was probably the best game of football I've seen in the flesh this season. They were very, very good. And since then, they've kind of fallen off a bit. So I'm quite surprised, really. Maybe they just haven't got enough left in the tank. But from a Wolves perspective, we couldn't have asked for anything more. A team that, Villa have been one of the form sides since Unai Emery's took over. And Wolves got the job done, clean sheet, 3 points, happy days.
Well, the two Spanish managers that have taken over, I think the form table would have Villa third since the start after the World Cup, and it would now have Wolves sixth after the World Cup. Now, Nocky, if that form is taken into next season, then not that we're talking about Aston Villa, but that's puts the West Midlands firmly back on the map with two very good teams.
I think we've both got a very big summer ahead of us. I mean, the managers have come in with players that aren't really their players. I know Lopetegui's done a little bit of work, and he's had to bring in some new players. But if he can do that and get the best out of players like Totti and bring Max Kilman back up to the level that he was at, those kind of things are going to make a massive difference going into next season. And if you give him a chance to build his own squad now, bring some more players in, clear some of the deadwood out, I don't have any fears for next season. I don't think Wolves will be anywhere near the bottom 3 or 4 teams. I think we'll be comfortable, ideally in the top 10. That'll be my ambition for next season. I think he's capable of doing that. He's not come here to sit in a relegation battle every season. He's too big a manager for that. So it's similar with Unai Emery. He'll be having lofty ambitions, but I think Villa have hit the precipice of what they can do with that squad, whereas I think we've still got more to offer. So it could be an interesting season next year.
Absolutely. You are listening to episode 63 of the Wolves Report with BBC WM's Steve Herman and Mark Knock and myself, Ryan Lester. Steve, after the Brighton game, you never owed one, but after that total sort of collapse, whether I called it was I can't even say what I want to say, but it was an absolute stinker of a game. And I think it sort of took the edge off of Wolves fans a bit, thinking, well, if that's their attitude, we're just going to lose to Villa. Because if you play like that against any Premier League team, whether it's Brighton, whether it's Villa, if you have an off day in the Premier League, you will lose. But it was almost a payback for those 3,000 fans that had gone down and suffered the week before, and those that had listened or watched as well.
Yeah, I thought everything you said from the Brighton game in last week's episode. I was listening on one of my training runs, so thank you for the company. And I thought you guys summed it up really well, and you've just hit the nail on the head there. They couldn't. 6-0 is unforgivable.
Sorry, it's the roast on the coast. I'd forgotten my own headline.
There you go. 6-0 is unforgivable. So yeah, Wolves fans were owed one, and the fact that it's coming a West Midlands derby makes it even sweeter. But I suppose what I said before about Aston Villa and how good they've been, I guess you looking at ourselves again, the home form under Lopetegui largely has been absolutely superb. So maybe I shouldn't have been as surprised maybe as I was, really.
Absolutely. Nocky, I think it's 4 home wins on the spot with 4 clean sheets. And we've talked about Jose Sarr, and he's up in one of the questions again later on. But something that we've not experienced for a very, very long time. It looks like Fortress Molineux again. We're not just beating any teams. There's Spurs in there. There's Chelsea in there. Beats and obviously the last win as well. So there's some solid wins. Local derby. Some high-flying teams that have spent a lot of money. Lopetegui's setting some serious foundations for Wolves.
He has not. I think he's pretty obviously targeted the home games, because we've almost not neglected the away games. We've almost kind of accepted we're not going to get anything, but we're going to focus on what we can do at Molineux, and that's where we'll stay up, and that's exactly what we've done. I think from a local derby point of view, I think the 2 results with Brighton and then with Man United were the 2 worst possible results for Villa, because we had it a couple of seasons ago when we played Birmingham after they got hit for 8 by Bournemouth. And they come to Molineux, shut up shop, and it was a 0-0 draw. And then it was similar when we played Bournemouth earlier this season when they got slapped. Was it 9? Came back, shut up shop. It just kind of resets everything when you get a bit of a kick in. And they've been on a hell of a run as well. So when you lose that game after you've been on such a good run, it can take the wind out your sails. And how often do you see that where a team hasn't lost for such a long time and they go on a bit of a run after that? So I think all the stars just aligned for us in that game. But the home form's just absolutely pivotal for us. The atmosphere's improved. We look organised now. We look like away from home. We don't always have a guaranteed shape. You can't pick what we're going to do. You can't pick the formation. Whereas at home now, I think we've all got a relatively good idea what shape we're going to set up with, who's going to play within maybe 2 or 3 players. And we look like we can win games at home. We look organised. We're not conceding goals, which is absolutely fantastic in this league. I think we've got, was that 10 home clean sheets now? I think that's as many as anyone else in the league.
That's incredible, really, isn't it? Considering the
fantastic.
season that Wolves have had, that's incredible.
Well, you consider bottom of the league at Christmas, 4 points from safety, and we've come back and got a record like that at home. That is phenomenal. That's what an elite manager can bring to a club.
Absolutely. Steve, for me, one key player on Saturday. I mean, there was a lot of good performances, but you really get the feeling that Ruben Neves knows what it means to play and beat Aston Villa. The guy's pressing, he's tracking, he's doing. I mean, he's a wonderful footballer with a wonderful range of passing, and his technique and the way he can manipulate a ball. But the other side of his game, he's not the quickest, but he's box to box to box. He's in the tackle, he's smashing it. That guy wanted it. He played like a derby. And for me, when your captain's leading like that, you're going to win games.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what did he just rack up 250 appearances, which is absolutely insane. I think anybody who said that Ruben Neves would clock up that amount for us, you wouldn't believe him. But you don't clock up that many appearances without, bleeding gold and black and, knowing what it means to the fans about in West Midlands derbies. I mean, it's not necessarily a derby for him, but when he was at Porto, they'd have been up for big games against Sporting Lisbon and Benfica. I suppose Braga's their nearest derby sort of thing that way. But, they're passionate in Portugal. They know what it means in terms of what results mean for the fans. And Ruben Neves knows that. Like you said, he leads from the front. He's a captain. I think, importantly, what Wolves have added is captain material in people like Craig Dawson as well. Not necessarily that he knows what it means, although he has obviously featured in a Black Country derby, but less said about that, the better.
I think so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Ruben Neves, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and the comments that he said to Mike Taylor on BBC WM after the game as well, he said that he was obviously cagey about his future, saying he doesn't know what the summer's going to bring, but he did say that whatever happens, he'll still come back to Molineux, he'll still be a fan, and who knows, he might come back one day and play again if he is to leave. You can't say enough good words about him.
Yeah, I mean, this all started off for whatever reason against Villa. I mean, because obviously me, you, Nocky, we sort of grew up sort of in Villa territory, and it probably meant a little bit more because obviously it was firstly Blues and Villa, but you want to beat your local teams. Obviously, we want to beat West Brom as well, absolutely. But this sort of started off, I think it was with Keith Wyness and Steve Bruce sort of rattling Wolves, getting Wolves investigated. And for me, there wasn't really any needle. It was a game that you liked, but ever since then, and I'm happy to say this, I felt like it felt a little bit more important to Wolves fans. And I think that's probably why Wolves have had the edge over the last few years.
I think it was probably always going to go that way. I mean, the reason there's not been much needle between the clubs is because they were predominantly a lot better than we were for most of my time following the club. We didn't really play them. We played them in a couple of cup games and they beat us. So the needle wasn't there because we were the poor relation, really. They had no need to dislike us, in all honesty. That's why we had such a relationship with Birmingham. And
do you think they like us now?
No, but that's why we had the relationship with Birmingham and Albion, because we were playing them twice a season, and we then got into a position where we kind of knocked them off their perch when they came to the Championship, which started with Joe Mason getting that winner at Molineux when we had a really poor side, but we still managed to beat them. And then we've been pretty much neck and neck then. We got ahead of them. And when you've been on, when you've been top of the shot for as long as I have, and little old Wolves come and knock you off your perch, it's gonna take the wind out your sails a little bit. So I think that rivalry was going to build regardless of them reporting us to the FA. I just think it was. You look at us now with Birmingham, there's not a great deal between Wolves and Birmingham anymore because we don't play them anymore. Even with the Albion, there's not a great deal with the Albion now, really, because we're not playing them. So I think whoever you're nearest is where the issues are going to come in. So they don't like us because we've taken over from them, and even on their best season since returning to the Premier League, we're still taking 4 points off them. So the frustration's got to be there for them, because I'd have been fuming as well. If they'd have come into that game thinking we'll turn Wolves over, they've just lost 6-0.
Well, there was a feel of that before the game amongst the fans. I mean, there was, a few people in the group chats. I mean, you and Tyler, and we all said it wasn't like, I'm looking forward to it, but I don't feel like I should feel it for a derby. But you know what, I'm very, very happy now. Really, really impressed. But obviously the game started fast, Steve. Wonderful ball in from Ruben Neves and an absolutely thunderous header from Totti. And he always looks better when it goes on off the bar. When a player rises above, he shoved Tyrone Mings out of the way, popped it in off the bar. The place has gone bananas, and that's just erupted the atmosphere.
Yeah, just a quick one on the derby rivalry. Obviously, I'm grew up over the Black Country, and for me, like Nocky said, that rivalry against Blues, it was Blues and Albion for me because that's who you were playing against. You you aspired to get to Villa's level.
Yeah.
Tommy Johnson scored in the League Cup quarterfinals.
I was there that day. Yeah.
And that I remember that. That was I think that was the first time in my lifetime that we played him in a proper game. So yeah, I think, we aspired to kind of get to the level that Aston Villa were at. And this is where I think the needle has come from, is that personally, this is just my personal opinion, but I do think, even though they deny it, I think they don't like it that Wolves have punched above Villa's weight over the last few seasons. Obviously, Villa have got their noses back in front again, and deservedly so. That, as I say, that great team, and they've built some fantastic players, but we are still too close for their comfort, I think. So I think that's where the rivalry comes from. And going back to the game and the atmosphere, like you said, maybe the build-up wasn't there in the same way that it would be for a game against the Albion or against the Blues back in the 90s, because I always remember them being really ferocious. But as soon as that goal went in, like you said, and the whistle blows, the atmosphere, the roar, that, it all comes out.
It was good Saturday, yeah. It was really good. Probably as good as it's been for a while. Just jumping in, Steve, still with us, Stage, regarding rivals. If you can't be with the ones that you hate the ones you're with. I mean, that's fantastic. It's fantastic. I mean, it's so good.
That is a brilliant way of putting it. And what I would also say is, take Villa out of the Premier League. Who would you say in the Premier League you don't like next?
I mean, if Tyler was here, you'd get a list now. He'd go, but I mean, I love Wolves and I love football. But next on the list, then,
I know who I'd pick, and it's literally based on the needle that's been created over the last 12 months.
Forest.
Ooh.
Yes.
Ooh, yeah.
It's a difficult question for me because I don't really like anyone. I'm not really keen on Ryan, in all honesty, but I'm just
doesn't even like me.
I don't like any of them. But you touched on a good point, actually, in terms of the viciousness and the ferociousness, and that's probably why the atmosphere hasn't been as bad. I mean, you went to Birmingham and they were throwing bricks at you, whereas Villa were throwing prawn sandwiches at you. It's kind of it's not really they haven't got that nasty, horrible edge to them. They're just more annoyed, I think, of where we are in the league, which is probably why that needle has arrived. But it'd be interesting to see how that pans out. If we were to get relegated, or they were to get relegated, we didn't play each other for 5-10 years, no one would care less again.
Adrian Richards says, shouts out, he hates Leeds, Everton, Liverpool and Forest. I mean, you've only left a couple of teams left there, but fair play to you.
Forest will be on there now.
Just absolutely, and it's a good point. I think things happen in games, results, incidents, and then you can't wait to play them again because you want to set the record straight, and that's why football's so good, because our next derby loss could come at the start of next season. But you know what? I might have been accused of over celebrating and doing other things this weekend, but enjoy your victories, take them, celebrate, because your next loss or derby loss is only around the corner. So when you win a game that's important, you have to enjoy it. That's why we go for those moments. So yeah, still enjoying it now until we probably lose on Man United on Saturday. But yeah, Steve, going back to the game, tactically, it was very much the manager trusts his players to play a certain way and to shut up shop. It's not pleasant from the stands. It's a tough watch, but it doesn't really matter if you win. But one thing tactically that stood out to me is pretty much the whole game. Wolves left 2 up front. Now, I know me and Nocky were stood together at Leicester, and we knew what was coming as soon as we went at 1 up front. I'm not going to call it a mistake, but he didn't make that choice against Villa. I mean, I think he might have switched things around to sort of 5-3-2 near the very end of the game, but played the majority of the game with 2 up front, and that helped Wolves always have a get out.
I also didn't like it towards the end when he you said about the 5-3-2, that made that piled on the nerves for me, and I think he did it. I think he did it at Villa Park as well.
Yeah,
where he
did bring a centre back on, yeah.
And I think he has done it on a couple of occasions. And personally, I mean, obviously it didn't backfire at the weekend, but personally, I don't know. It piled on more pressure. But in terms of the two up top, and what I do want to say about Mateus Cunha, I mean, I watched a little video that Wolves popped up earlier today on their Twitter.
He looked good, didn't he, in that?
Some of the skills that he was dancing around. How much better does he look when he's got some company?
Yeah.
And not just company, but confidence as well. I think he's getting. I mean, last time I was on, I talked about the interview that I did with him after the Man City game, and he was very much still getting used to the Premier League then, and he did say it was more physical than he anticipated, and it's better every week than he anticipated. This isn't a league where you get a give me. Where you get a gimme, you've got to work hard for every single point. And Mateus Cunha looks like he's finally getting to grips with that, and we do look like we've got the player that why we're going to be shelling in the summer £40-odd million for him. That was the thing I was most impressed with.
It's I don't know if anyone that's listening on Spotify as well, or anyone that's watching, if anyone goes back to the Matrix, when is it Neo and he goes, he's starting to believe. At that moment in that game when he's gliding in and out and going past people, those runs, we've always seen that talent's there, but I don't think he's had like you said, getting up to speed and believing it. But when he's picking the ball up in that 10 position, as Nocky and Tyler have said for quite a long time, that's his best position, and letting Wolves break there. Yeah, it was a fantastic performance.
He was picking up the ball from deep, like from a couple of those runs. He was picking them up from the edge of the box, not just the number 10 position. It was fantastic.
And it takes confidence as well to take. I know, but both the Mateuses like picking the ball up from deep and running, and that's fine with me because it's a great get out as opposed to a long ball and try and holding it up. It's great when you've got players that've got the confidence and legs to take it out because it's a completely different option. Going back to the game, Nocky. Who was your standout? I know there was a couple of brilliant performances, but who was your main standout on Saturday?
Mario Lemina for me. I think he does such a fantastic job for us. I think he's so important. He's as important as any player on the pitch, in my opinion. You can look at Totti. He scored a brilliant goal, and I was delighted to see him get that goal because it really meant something to him. Cunha with his runs was absolutely sensational, and Costa running the line. But there's just something about Lemina. I feel safe when he's around the ball. If the opposition are break out, someone took it down the right wing. I can't think who it was for Villa, and he just stepped in. It might have been Watkins. He just stepped in, took the ball off him, and he brings us out. And the layer of confidence he brings into the team, and he allows Neves to get a little bit further forward. He lets those midfielders go forward and play because you've got Mr. Reliable behind you. He doesn't want to do anything fancy. I've never seen him give the ball away. He just gets the ball, he wins it, and he gives it to the players who play. I just think he's such an important player for us. And I mean, you could pick any of them really, because although it wasn't a sensational performance, everybody did their job. And you look at Craig Dawson, the stability he's brought to that back line and the way he's brought Max Kilman on. He was just such a strong influence. When you've got the spine of your team, you've got Dawson at the back, you've got Lemina in midfield, and then you've got Costa up front. You've got so much to work off there, and you can see all three of them shouting and pointing.
Experienced pros.
Yeah, it just gives you that level of. We haven't had many voices at Wolves, I think, is the key element too. We've always been a relatively quiet team, especially when we lost Connor Cody. But we've seemed to have players now who are ordering players around, and if it goes wrong, they're pointing them, dragging them into position, and you can't underestimate how important that is when you're in a position that we've been in. So Lemina for me has been as important as anybody else in that team in getting us out of this mess.
Steve, I know Nocky's been through and praised the whole team and left you nothing to talk about, but who would you pick out as a key player for Wolves on Saturday?
I think Craig Dawson was just an absolute.
I've already had him, mate.
Yeah, I know. Who's left?
Yeah, no, mate.
Dawson, you mentioned him earlier, Steve, as
well. Dawson needs some love, so let's give him some love. For me, Steve, him and Mario Lemina are the two main reasons why Wolves aren't getting relegated this season. Sensational. Nockies give Lemina lots of love, but Craig Dawson was 10 years younger, he wouldn't be playing for Wolves.
Signings of the season, both of them together, I think. To to jump on what Nocky said, like Lamina, he does the simple stuff. I know you spoke about it last week, and you talked about the conversation he had with that little lad Fraser when he said about I pass it and I
win it and I pass it.
I win it and I pass it. That he exactly, he's not even ashamed of that, and he shouldn't be, because he does it bloody well. That is his job. He knows his job, and he does it very well, and that's fantastic. But in terms of Craig Dawson, I think, he's an imposing figure. He's a leader. He's experienced, but he's also brought a calmness. Because I think I like Kilman and I like Collins individually, but I think it was weighing them down, their partnership. And I think even though Kilman's obviously had the armband when Neves hasn't been playing, and he kind of
won both games.
Yeah, so obviously he's got an element of leadership in him, because they wouldn't give him the captain's armband if he didn't. But I just think having Dawson there instead, with either of them, to be honest, but it's obviously mostly been Kilman. It's just that, just that commanding, calming presence. And I absolutely 100% agree with you that if we hadn't have signed him and Lamina, I think we would have gone down.
Yeah, fantastic bit of business. And I think someone mentioned it before. They might have mentioned, I did a post-game space on Saturday night, and I think someone mentioned that we have to give Bruno Lage a bit of credit, because Bruno wanted to sign him at the start of the season. So things may have turned out a little bit different then. I know I think it would eventually ended bad. But considering that was the main target, where Wolves would have been if it have landed their man. But Craig Dawson, fantastic. Another player for me, obviously, every week he's 8 out of 10 now. Ruben Neves, pressing, rattling into tackles, sliding, solid distribution. As I think someone mentioned on the chat, on the live chat from Facebook and YouTube, his delivery from the corners, Wolves looked a threat. There wasn't like floated anymore. He's whipping them in. There's some good free kicks. So Ruben Neves, for me, leading from the front by example, by his play, a phenomenal footballer. And as you mentioned, Steve, he's as honest as he could interview with WM's Mike Taylor about his future. But it does feel like this will be the last we'll see of Ruben Neves.
Yeah, I mean, there is part of me, and it's the hope that kills you, but we said this last season. I think I might have even been on the Wolves report this time last season, saying that we thought he was going. But and there's been the report today saying that the swap deal potentially with a bit of money for us in our favour.
With Ansu Fati.
That's it for Ansu Fati from Barcelona. The latest report that I read today was that actually Barcelona aren't interested in Ruben Neves. So, I mean, someone's going to be interested in Ruben Neves. They'd be mad not to. And I think the thing with Wolves fans, and I probably did say this time last season, is that I think Wolves fans accept now that Ruben Neves is that good. He deserves to go and win trophies and play in the Champions League week in, week out. I think we all accept that. And he would go with our blessings, because he's stuck around, like I said earlier, 250 plus games now. He's stuck around for a lot longer than we expected, and it's been an absolute pleasure to watch. But what I would say, I'm not necessarily at this stage, call me stupid, but I'm not necessarily worried if he does go, because I think we do have options that you're not going to replace Ruben Neves in terms of the complete player and the absolute world-class quality, but I am confident enough that we have got players, and we can bring in another player, I'm sure, that can plug the gap.
Well, we've seen Nocky from the performances without him. Now, I'm not saying, quick, let's get rid of Ruben Neves, best player I've ever seen. He's an example professional. He's a young dad. He's dedicated to two things heavily: his family and Wolverhampton Wanderers. Quite like a lot of the Portuguese players that we've been lucky to have the last few years. But in those two games, and it's only a snapshot, Wolves looked a different team. Now, they wasn't playing the rangy passes, but it did give you confidence that the future might not be so bad without Ruben Neves.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you're always going to miss a player like Ruben Neves, no matter how we butter it up. You're going to miss him because he's a top class player. But there's not many players I'd wish well leaving Wolves. They're dead to me the second they leave. But with him, I'd wish him nothing but success going forward. And I think we can cope without him. I mean, we've got João Gomez, who looks a really exciting player. We've got Mario Lemina, who we've already spoken about. We've got Nunez, who I think will improve without Neves, because I think he'll be able to get into those positions that Neves takes up. He'll have more of the ball. We'll be more reliant on him. So we've got options to do so. And much as I'd like to keep Neves, we spent a lot of money last year. I don't think we've got an endless pot of money to throw around, and he's one of our saleable assets. So I can't see him staying at Wolves. I just think to rebuild the squad, we're going to need to spend money. We're going to have to make money because we haven't got a huge vat. So I think they'll sell him and look to rebuild around him. And we've bought in a lot of midfielders. I don't think it's an accident we've bought in those midfielders. I think we were always planning to lose Ruben at the end of the season. So if he goes, I wish him well, but it'll give us an opportunity to be a little bit more dynamic. We've been stuck in the rut of Neves gets the ball, he hits a 40, 50-yard ball out to the wide players, and we build. Without him there, we were playing through midfield.
That kind of worked better, Nocky. Sorry to jump in, but that kind of pass was the Nuno way with the wing backs. Yeah. When you could overload left or right, you can't really do it this way because you can't overload as much. So, yeah, but sorry to jump in. He's wonderful at what he does, but he doesn't feel as effective with his style of play.
No, I think the issue we've had as well, we've kind of stifled him with the way that we've played because he needs those players to run him behind that he can feed those balls to. Without Adama in the team, he hasn't really been able to do that. And the problem is when you've got Adama in the team and you've got Neves in the team, Adama runs and Neves puts it over the top. That's generally we get sucked into that a little bit. Whereas without him, we have to find a new way of playing, and we've been able to do that in a couple of games that he's been missing. So we're going to feel it, and any team in the Premier League, I think, would feel leaving Ruben Neves. But I think what we've done very intelligently and very quietly is already replace him. And now it's a case of just integrating that system. And it'd be interesting to see what we do now, because I expect him to play for the last 3 games, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's not playing the full 90 minutes now and we start trying to bleed that new midfield in a little bit more. But yeah, if he goes, which I think he will, I wish him nothing but success.
Wolf Aid tells us, hey lads, watching this and Real City on Who Said Blokes Can't Multitask. Me, there's no way I could do that, but thank you for your contribution. As always, this show is recorded live and it's fed out on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. You can put live comments on the show via Facebook and YouTube. And for those that listen on Spotify, I'll try and upload it after the show this evening. So that'll be on there probably about an hour afterwards. But thank you for your contribution to the live show. Let's just tidy up now the rest of the game. Steve, as we mentioned, it feels quite a continental thing when you're a goal up to tuck in and absorb, and we keep what we have and don't be more adventurous. It's frustrating when you think you could probably go and kill games. Wolves probably had the chance to finish the game off. Well, go 2-up with Diego Costa. I think Matheus Nunes had a chance when he sort of got lost under his feet a bit. So it's not like Wolves had one. It was a total smash and grab. But I think this tucking in and holding on is here to stay. And if you keep getting clean sheets, then you've got to trust the system, Steve.
If you get wins, get clean sheets, who cares? Some of the football at times under Nuno, more towards the end, and there were more losses, to be fair, than wins. But, if the football was terrible and you were getting a win, I don't think anyone really cares, do they? But by the way, just to prove a point that men can multitask as well. Wolves women are leading 1-0 against Stourbridge in the Birmingham County Cup final. Amber Hughes with the goal.
Excellent. And a bit of free BBC WM commentary there for us, Nocky. Getting live updates on the show. We need Steve on more often.
Hang on a second.
Steve Herman.
Amber Hughes has scored at Molineux. It's Wolves women 1, Stourbridge 0 in the Birmingham County Cup final. Great goal for Hughes. 29 minutes gone. It's Wolves women 1. Stourbridge.
You'll be in the office tomorrow morning, Steve. Steve, we need to have a chat.
Budget straight out the window now, isn't it? We've just
our budget shattered now. We can't afford Tyler anymore. Right, there's something I've been working on for a little while. A new segment to the show, and it's called Who Am I? So it's a little bit of fun for anyone listening, and for Steve and for Nocky. I've got 2 players. I'm going to read out clues, go down the list. You can think about it. You can think about it yourself. If you've got an idea, type it in the group chat. If it's good, I'll get it. So let's start. For the first time, who am I? I started my career at Stoke, but I never made a first team appearance for the Potters.
Carl Emery.
Nope.
I was going to
Nockie's
say
lost
that
his
myself.
first life.
Oh.
I scored my first professional goal for Northampton in 2009.
Northampton.
I was loaned to Cheltenham, Carlisle, and Sheffield Wednesday whilst at Stoke.
Oh, no.
Oh,
I was going to say Ebanks Landell, but he was in our academy first. So
I made 372 career appearances and scored 48 goals. This is the bit that confused me. I am now 32.
blimey.
I've been teammates with Harry Kane, Jamie Vardy, David Raya, and Wes Brown. The
He's a
group
Wolves
chat's
player.
dead. No, it's a
Oh
Wolves player, mate. I signed for Wolves in January 2017. Now, this is where I'm going to get hit now. I scored my first goal for Wolves v Reading in March 2017 in a game that Wolves lost 2-1. I left Wolves to join Millwall on loan.
Jed Wallace.
No.
I permanently left Wolves to join Norwich on a 4-year deal.
No, it's not Carl Robinson. That's
Ooh. Here we go.
Joe
This is the giveaway.
Joe Mason? No.
I am 6 foot and can play right wing back or right back or forward.
Oh. That's what... No, I don't know. I just wanted to use my buzzer.
I had the number 64 shirt whilst at Molineux.
Dominic Iorfa? No.
Any final guesses on the group chat? I'm enjoying this because I thought you'd get it easily. The answer is our old friend, Ben Marshall.
Ben Marshall. Bloody
Come
hell.
on.
Tyler will be watching this, disgusted with you two.
Did he
Disgusted.
mention Blackburn at any point, didn't he?
No, I didn't on purpose. Absolutely not. It's not that easy, Steve. We're dealing with professionals. Like Carl Whitehouse has put on the chat, Marshall, after we've said it. We'll give you that one, Carl. 1-0 to Carl Whitehouse. Right, round 2, winner takes all. Who am I? I have played for Brentford, Norwich, and Leicester, amongst other clubs.
Brentford, Norwich, and Leicester.
I started my youth career at Wimbledon. I scored 8 goals in 14 appearances for England under 21s, but when I was a full international, I played for another country but didn't score a goal. This one's a beauty. I have a half brother who plays for Chelsea. Oof. I scored 66 career goals in 284 appearances. This one's going to proper throw you as well. I'm loving this. I've been teammates with John Hartson, Frank Lampard, and Jamie Carragher. I made my Wolves debut away at Portsmouth in January 2004. I was at that game.
Blimey. You've got me stumped.
I was sent off 3 times in my career.
It's not Guy Whittingham, is it?
It's not Guy Whittingham, but we have a winner. I can see on the chat, and he's beat the 2 pundits. I scored 1 hat-trick for Wolves. This is easy now. No, this next one's going to get you, but you're going to fly now. I signed from Newcastle for £2 million. Carl Court. But the winner is Lee Tonks, who said Carl Court. Well done. I hope you enjoyed that, guys. I mean, got to be honest, my pundits have fallen apart there. And
I'm disappointed. Stato Steve, no more.
Did we enjoy that, guys? Was that fun?
I'm Premier League now, mate. I don't do Championship players.
That concludes this first edition of Who Am I? If you enjoyed that, let me know on the group chat. If that's not for you, let me on the messenger. I very much enjoyed that.
Great idea, terrible pundits.
Let's now move on to this week's questions.
Can I mention one more player before we do that?
Yeah, go on, mate.
I've been quite disappointed with was Pedro Neto. I thought he was fantastic against Villa. I thought he ran his socks off. Really worked hard. So I just think he deserves a mention because I've kind of said I don't think he's going to make it at Wolves. Whereas performances like that, I may end up eating humble pie on that one.
Looked like his old self, didn't he?
Did you?
I think what I like the video that Wolves put out of him celebrating, pressing, and getting the ball out of play. For me, Nocky, he did everything you'd expect in a derby, the pressing, the tracking. I didn't see as much quality as I've liked, but if he's given that kind of application, for me, and I don't mean this in a bad way, it was a very much a Hwang performance, and he was defending from the front, and he was doing all the ugly stuff brilliantly well, but without a lot of productivity. However, I don't care because Wolves won, but yeah, fair shout, Nocky. Let's move on to this week's questions. Andrew Powell says, I'd like to know your thoughts on Collins. With Dawson and Kilman being first choice, does that damage his development? Nocky?
I don't think so. I mean, he's a young man. He's a young player.
He's 21, 22?
Yeah, he's had a difficult start at Wolves. He's not playing first-team football, as we know, but he's still training alongside a very experienced Craig Dawson and a Max Kilman who's developing nicely. So he's learning his trade. We've seen it with other players who don't necessarily start games. Joe Gomez couldn't get in the team when he first started, but he's learning, he's developing. I think it's the same with Collins. We signed him for a decent amount of money. He's come from a team, so he's got Premier League experience. You sometimes have to take into account he's still a young man. He's a human being who's suffered a bit of a lack of form. So I don't think it will hurt him. I certainly wouldn't be looking to offload. I think Lopetegui seems to be improving players. We can see that now. So for me, he'll be Dawson's replacement. Maybe not next season, but the season after. So no, I'm not too worried about Collins. I think I've seen enough there to make me think there's a very good centre half in there.
Well, I agree. I think he's a great footballer. I thought he had a good start to the season. He didn't look too bad, but not for. I mean, he was only 21 then. No through thought of his own. He's a young guy. So bringing in someone like Dawson to add some solid leadership and experience was what we needed when Wolves were only heading in one direction. Thanks for your question, Andrew Powell. London Wolf asks, with all the new players in and not many out yet, are we sailing close to the win financial fair play? Steve Herman.
I think you'll have to give that question to Kieran Maguire, the football finance expert, rather than me. To be honest, I have no idea in terms of how close we are. I mean, I know, I think we all know going back to we got into Europe too quickly, didn't we? Which put us on UEFA's radar, and that started a situation where we had to be careful. To be honest, I'm not sure what the situation is. I think, Nocky touched on it earlier in terms of how much money we've got to spend. I think that's more not necessarily at risk of or sailing close to financial fair play. It's how much are Fosun gonna spend in the summer? I mean, they've thrown a lot of money this season, obviously.
Well, they had to protect their assets, Steve, because if they didn't spend in January, Wolves were going down. Exactly.
And I think you've got to include, the 40 million for Matheus Cunha. That's coming out of this summer's budget, isn't it? It's, as a permanent signing. So are the majority of funds going to come from Ruben Neves? I think if we are selling Ruben Neves for a big fee, then I can't imagine should be worried about FFP.
No, I mean, I've only got a brief knowledge on this. There's a guy called Craig Spillard on Twitter who's very good with the numbers and stuff. But as far as I'm aware, the financial fair play, and that's why Chelsea have been doing long contracts, because in terms of the money spent, it's based over the length of the contract, and that's why Chelsea have been doing 7 and 8 year deals. I mean, it's smart from them. It's naughty, but it's smart, and they've seen a loophole and taken it. So, London Wolf, thank you for your question. Say that again.
Shut that loophole now, though, haven't they? On the
5-year max, isn't it?
Chelsea.
Now? I think.
So. Rinse 2 windows and done that. Okay. Still with us, if we had to sell Hugo and Ryan Aitken-Roy to raise funds, would you be comfortable with the fridge, Toti Gomez, and Giles as left back options next season? Oof. Ooh.
No.
Nocky, your face looks disgusted.
I think we'll sell Aitken-Roy. I don't think we'll sell Bueno. And if you did sell Bueno at this stage of his development, what are you going to get? 5 million?
No, I think you probably get more than that now, but I think with another season, he could be worth a lot of money. Young, Spanish, talented fullback.
There's not a chance in hell we'll sell Hugo. Giles, I think he'll go. I don't think he'll stay at Wolves.
I agree.
Just don't think he's at the level we would need him to be. He's done really well at Middlesbrough. I think he'll be an excellent Championship player. At some point, he'll dip into the Premier League, but I don't think he'll be an option for Wolves. And long term, I think Totti will be a centre half. So No, I know he's clearly going to go. He doesn't fancy him. He can't get anywhere near the team. So that's kind of done and dusted now. But no, I don't think there's any reason to sell Bueno. I think he's going to be an absolutely fantastic left back. To sell him now would be pretty ridiculous, in all honesty, with the money that we could acquire for him in a few years. So Giles will go. And Toti's an option for us. But
Johnny will probably go. Sanderson will go.
Yeah, Toti's filling in a blank at the moment, I think, and he's giving us a real hard working ethic down that side, but long term, he's not going to be our number one choice at left back.
Yeah, I mean, I think his win ratio from his performances at Wolves so far is off the chart, and he doesn't look the most orthodox player, but he doesn't really give the ball away that much.
No, he's earned the shirt.
He has earned the shirt, and I mean, what is he? 6'1". He's big. He's strong. He's scoring from corners. Good luck to him. If you'd have said a year ago he'll be playing left back at the end of next season, I would not have believed it. But he stepped up and he's played a massive part. Great question still with her. Thank you. Mike Allen asks, I mean, a few of these questions overlap, but Mike Allen asks, with the number of outgoings needed to finance incomings, how many games will we have played next season before we sign anybody? That's a really good point. And I think this happened at the start of next season. And I know you're laughing, Steve, but it's true, because if we haven't offloaded anybody, and that's the rule of what we need to do, Wolves can we afford to really playing 3 or 4 games without any signings?
Yeah, I think in whether it's the summer window or the January one, the ideal scenario is that you get your signings in and get your business done as soon as the window opens. But at the end of the day, football doesn't work like that. It's not realistic. I'm not properly answering that question because I'm probably giving it a bit of a not a sarcastic response, but sort of in the sense of, well, yeah, obviously we'd like it to be done before the start of the season, but football doesn't work like that, does it?
Absolutely, but I think this pre-season is huge for Lopetegui, because I don't think we've seen what he wants to do yet. He's found a method for Wolves to win games, to get them safe and work from there. I don't think we'll see Wolves quite like this. I think it'll be a little bit different come the start of next season. And to do that, you need your players in early to bed them in.
And what I would say is, I mean, the fact that we are now officially safe, then, and I think the work had started, and the planning for next season probably would have started a long time ago. He was probably planning for next season, as soon as the January window shut. They were probably looking at, and I think a lot of clubs do this, they look at both options, right? Worst case scenario, if we were a championship team, what are the options we can go for? Best case scenario, we're still in the Premier League. These are the players we want to go for, and these are the players that we want to ship out. I think in terms of the players that are being shipped out, I think it's been made pretty obvious by the team selection who is out of favour, so who is likely to be available to be sold, and hopefully sold as well. I think the fact that Wolves have made themselves safe, maybe that does make business planning easier. But like I said, football's not perfect, and it doesn't quite work like that, does it?
Absolutely, Mike Allen. Thank you for your question. Thank you for your great response.
There's
Steve.
Any risk with that. I don't think there's any risk at all. I think that we know who's going to offload. I think there'll be a massive chunk of players go. There'll be a lot of free transfers going who are on big money. You don't get a manager like Lopetegui unless you've got a plan in place of how you're going to fund him and make sure he's getting him what he wants. So I don't think that'll be any kind of concern. I think Wolves will operate relatively quickly in this window, and we'll be ready.
Thank you, Nocky. Bit of fun on this one. Mark Polton and Paul Nichols would both like to know, where is Luke Kundal's statue going? Steve, we'll leave you out of that one. Nocky, where are we placing that statue?
Well, when they have to bulldoze the Hawthorns in a few months because they've gone bankrupt, we'll stick it on top of that.
I thought you'd be happy after the weekend. There's no stopping you, mate. There's no stopping you. Great question there. Thank you for it being involved. Quick fire question for you both here. Jonah asks, with the number of leaving in the summer, it's clear a rebuild is needed, but who are your first 5 players on your keep list? Steve, quick fire 5 players you must keep and must not sell.
Does it matter about contracts? Just literally straight from the current squad?
We can't include Neves.
Okay. Dawson, Lamina. I'd keep Nunes. I know a lot of people have said about him and resale value, and has he got I still think there's room for improvement with Mateus Nunes, Mateus Cunha as well, because he's only just signed. So that's 4. Oh, a 5th one. Come back to me on a 5th one.
Steve said Max Kilman for the 5th one. Nocky?
He sort of pinched my list there. I think Lamina, Dawson, João Gomez, Cunha, and Kilman. That'd be my 5. I think anyone else we could.
Yeah, I think. I mean, the way the 2 January signings, Craig Dawson. I mean, it doesn't look like he's slowing up. He's never been quick anyway. So players like that tend to last a little bit longer. I hope he's not watching. I don't mean to say that certainly wouldn't want you chasing me, but he's never been the quickest centre back, so I don't think he has to rely on his pace. Mario Lemina's been magnificent, but I think a player that has really blossomed since Dawson's arrival is Max Kilman. He's defending well again. He's been, one of my criticisms, I don't think he's been aggressive enough. I don't think he's been using that huge frame to bully people out of the way. I thought he was quite physical on Saturday against Villa. He was determined to get the clean sheet. He's on a huge contract, and I do worry that a huge offer could come in from someone that wants a centre-back like Chelsea in the summer that could get him. But we shall see. A great question, Jonah. This is a question that's rose up a few weeks. Spencer, now we are safe. Would you start Bentley in goal for the remaining games? I'll answer that question. He has been hit and miss. But what I would say back to you, Spencer, if he was good enough after some of those results, wouldn't he have started already? Plus, Sarr has a few iffy moments, but in the home games, he's been nothing short of fantastic. And he was a big reason that Wolves have won some of those games. Terrible mistake at Brighton, give the goal away. But I don't know, just a yes or no. Would you start Bentley in goal at United, Steve?
Yes, I'd like to see him play.
Would you like to see him start at United, Noko?
Before Saturday, yes, but now I think I'd stick with Sarr. I mean, you keep 4 clean sheets at home in a row against some of the opposition we played. Is there something there we can work on? It's his footwork that worries me. Can we spend a summer working on that? But if he's not in the plans for next season, then yeah, Bentley comes in and we see what he can do as a number 2 next year.
It's nice to have had a sneak preview into the ruthless side of Steve Herman. Jose Sarr, you're off, mate. Thanks very much. Thank you for your question, Spencer. Richard with the final question. Can you give us one player from each of Saints, Leicester, Leeds, Forest and Everton you'd like Wolves to sign? That is a great question. Now, the show's going to go on for 2 hours now. Now, you all know who to answer from Forest. Don't you dare. That is a tough one, isn't it? Now, I mean, we'll answer it all together because it's quite a tough one.
I think I've got one from each. I think I've got one
for me, from Forest, it'd be Brennan Johnson. I think that kid's ridiculously quick. I think he'll be going to someone like Man United, regardless. That's my first one.
From Forest, if Keylor Navas, the keeper, was 5 years younger, I'd like him, or Danilo.
Yeah, Danilo's really picked up, hasn't he? He's played really well. Noko?
Danilo was my pick as well. I think he looks really
I'm so glad you gave me those answers, gentlemen. I thought you were going to try and spoil my evening. Moving on to Leicester, Steve Herman. Realistic targets.
I was just about to say, because I mean, you'd say Maddison, wouldn't you? But he's going off somewhere higher. Castagna, or I know Harvey Barnes has been mentioned. Is that realistic?
He's probably going to go for 40 or 50 with English tax, isn't he? Is that realistic with what we're going to do with Cunha?
I don't think so. Realistic, is it? And I don't think we need a midfielder, to be honest. So that's why I said Castagna.
Can I throw a spanner in the works there? Would you take Jamie Vardy for a year?
Yes.
Nocky?
I mean...
Nocky, forget all this.
What's he had 2 goals this season? You'd take him for a year, but is that what we want to do and find ourselves back in the position of not having a striker again?
Yeah, I agree. It's just a question out there.
I wouldn't not take him, put it that way, if he was available.
Castagna's a great shout from Steve, and I'm with Castagna. Moving on to Saints, Nocky.
The striker, is it Alcaraz?
Yeah, handful.
I mean, I'd love to say Ward-Prowse, but I don't think that's realistic either. I think
we talked about this on the group chat, Steve.
Is he that good?
Would Ward-Prowse mean you have to play with that player that comes and collects off the centre back and plays deep again, or we have to moving away from that and playing with more mobility, because Prowse's ridiculous set play, probably one of the best ever in the Premier League set pieces, amazing, but he's not very mobile and he comes and collects. Is that the direction that we're going?
I mean, if you can get your 5 goals direct from set pieces every season and he can deliver a great ball from a corner, that's worth having, in my opinion, in a squad. The only other player I would say outside of Ward-Prowse, and I'm kind of thinking positional sense, is Walker Peters.
Yeah, great. Walker Peters is a great shout. Yeah,
wing back is Tomato's going.
Absolutely. Who have we got left?
Leeds and Everton. Nonto from Leeds.
Oh, absolutely. He's not getting a game. How is he not starting? Comes to Molineux, ruins Nelson Semedo. Fantastic. Not starting. No idea what's going on.
It's Nonto or Rodrigo from Leeds. I think they're both.
Yeah, Rodrigo's an old head, isn't he? Just solid. Last but not least, Everton.
My heart says Cody.
Oh, you stinker, Stephen.
That's my heart. My heart says. My head says Dwight McNeil.
Yeah, he seems to. I mean, he was brilliant. I don't know what Everton were doing the other night, but they were. Everton have just pulled that out of the bag, and Dwight McNeil looked like a £50 million footballer.
I've seen him a couple of times in the flesh. I did the Everton Villa game earlier on this season, and in an absolutely awful team, and they didn't play very well that day. He was by far the standout player. And again, set piece delivery. If Pedence is out of favour and being frozen out, I think he'd be a great player to play.
The one thing I like about him is he's big, strong, and he's direct. There's no real dancing round. He's straight to goal, and I think our manager prefers that kind of player. Richard, thank you for your amazing question there. It creates a little bit of debate. We are 57 minutes into episode 63 of the Wolves Report with BBC WM Steve Herman, club captain Mark Knock, and myself, Ryan Lester. Now I've got a bit of time to preview the Man United game before we get the predictions this week. Tough game at Old Trafford, never an easy place to go. For me, it sounds quite simple. If Wolves set up like they have in away games recently, it'll be a very easy afternoon for Man United. But now Wolves are safe, Knocky. I'm expecting Wolves to go there with a bit of bravery. We've seen that Man United can be got at. Yes, they can hurt you. Fernandes, Rashford, there's some very, very talented players, but equally, they are vulnerable to being pushed.
Yeah, it could go two ways, couldn't it? I think after we beat Palace, we turned up at Brighton feeling like we'd done a job and got stuffed 6-0. So I'm hoping now that we have done a job, we don't go in with the same.
That's because we played with 7 centre midfielders.
Yeah, I mean, they'll expect to just turn up and beat us. There's no doubt about that. I don't think they're great. Obviously, they're better than us. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think they're great. I think they can be got at. I think defensively they're suspect. It just depends how we set up, doesn't it? I mean, away from home we're pretty wretched. So it just depends if we set up to try and win the game, or are we just going to try and stifle and then break. Are we going to stick with what we're doing now? Or are we going to draft in and play 4 across and end up with one isolated Diego Costa again?
We know what happened. If we play with the isolated forwards, the ball comes back, and what happens at Brighton? We got away with it at Forest. We lost the game at Leicester, and that's 2 poor sides. You did it again against Brighton, and we got thumped, and that's what happens.
I'd like to think we could get something out of the game. It's a big ask because it's Man United away. I know we won there last season, but it's not something that happens particularly often. They don't lose a lot of home games, so my head says we're going to probably get beat, but my heart says we can go there, and if we set up right and we're organised and we keep them out, if we're still in the game on 70 minutes, I think Wolves can win it. But it's a big ask for us, isn't it? They're a very good team.
Steve, it's a big game. Man United have suffered for form. Liverpool are massively putting the pressure on. We thought Liverpool's Champions League chances had gone. They're squeezing them now. It looks really, really tough for Man United because Liverpool are absolutely flying. So Wolves just have a go. I mean, don't throw the kitchen sink there because you will get your pants pulled down. But I just want to see them go there. There's 3,000 fans that are going, that have paid the money. Have a go. Play 2 up front. If you want to tuck off a little bit with 2, that's fine. But give us an out ball. Give us an option.
You saying 3,000 fans going and show up and give them a performance. I don't think Lopetegui is going to make 11 changes like Mick McCarthy did for that game back.
We did that for Nocky's birthday, we was like there for Nocky's birthday.
That's what's George Friend steaming down the left wing.
Hey, but we got the 3 points against Burnley the next game, so
And that was what mattered.
Mick McCarthy was proven right. I remember those press conferences so well. Happy days. No, in terms of fast forward back to the modern day. Sorry to be a realist and also a bit negative, but we've mentioned Wolves away form. Man United have lost the last 2 games 1-0, but they were both away from home. At home, I think I'm correct in saying they haven't lost in 28 games in all competitions. Their last defeat at home was against Brighton in August. So I don't think that bodes well, particularly because obviously we're safe. I don't think they're going to take the foot off the gas like they did at Brighton. I think they have learned from that mistake, certainly. So I think they will give Man United more of a game than we did against Brighton. But yeah, I can only see a Man United win, to be honest. Sorry.
It just looks tough. Who needs Chris Tyler when we've got the reality checker, Steve Herman? We've had a fantastic week. We're enjoying our Villa win, and along comes Steve Herman. Definitely,
Tyler's been now. I don't think I fancy it all of a sudden.
Tyler's been texting you.
The BBC, we're all about balance. That's what we're all about.
We certainly just want, for me, I don't mind if they tuck in a bit, but it's the 2 up front, Nocky, Diego Costa again. I mean, if it's the same team that face Villa, I'm taking that. And we've seen for a majority of the game that team can defend. So just give us an 8 ball, give us a chance.
There's no reason not to go for it. I mean, if we end up losing the game 10-0, it's not going to make any difference to the end of the season. We're not going to go down. We're not probably going to
make a difference to podcast views next week.
It'd be a hell of a podcast, that one. But I just set up with the shape that he wants to use going forward would be my key. Look at the players that you think you're going to bring in. If you think this system's going to work for us, just play. I mean, I'd back Lamina and a holding midfielder against any team in the division apart from Man City, who would just run circles around you. But I don't think United have got the same pace and energy of Man City. So Lamina and Neves, I'm comfortable they could do a job there in that game. But you're up against good players, aren't you? Rashford seems to score against us every time he plays. They've got quality players in their team. But if they have lost 2 in a row, if they're set up with the wrong mentality and they look at Wolves' away form and think, we'll slap these, it won't be a problem, then maybe Wolves do pinch something. But it's one of them games we've got to score first. If we don't score first, then it'll be a very long evening for us, especially if we ship an early goal. But you've got to have belief, haven't you? We're going there to try and get a result. We've got nothing to lose. It's an absolute free hit because there's no ramifications whatsoever for us for losing the game. But if we go there, we have a go, we get beat 4-0, fine. If we go there and we sit back and we defend and we make it horrible again and we get beat 3 or 4-0, I'll be disappointed.
You know what? In any game of football, I'd rather lose finding out than sitting back and waiting for the inevitable to happen. But that's football. Coming to the end of the show now. Thank you to Steve Herman and Nocky. It's prediction time. We'll go with the sports professional journalist from BBC WM. No pressure, Steve. Your first goal scorer and score prediction, please. And don't copy what Tyler said to you.
This is the first time I've had to ask this question. Can the first goal scorer be from the other team?
This is Steve Herman's last appearance on the Wolves report. Yeah, of course. I think Tyler's done it a few times, to be honest. So no.
Rashford 3-1. Sorry.
Oof.
No, I don't like saying that, but I'm being a realist.
I don't like you saying
3 Wolves goals. Do you know what? I'm going to go 2-0 to Wolves. Early goal and then a breakaway goal in the 93rd minute. And I'm going to go for a Toti Gomez header from a corner again. It's coming home.
In the words of the great man, dreaming is for free. I'm going to go with the draw and sit in the middle. I'm going to go with Wolves 1.
Get the splinters out your backside.
I've got to balance. You said it's all about balance, Steve. And obviously with my occasional employment, we've had a loss, a draw and a win. So you said balance, and here I am balancing the books. Don't shoot me down. I'm going to go with 1-1. I'm going to go with Matheus Cunha. And just, gentlemen, just to remind you, Wolves' record in the Premier League at Man United isn't so bad. Recently we've drawn. Recently we've won. It isn't so bad. So Wolves have had some decent results. This has been episode 63 of the Wolves Report. Thank you to BBC WM's Steve Herman, and congratulations again on your magnificent work and run on Sunday. Nocky, club captain. Tyler, we have missed you. I hope you finished your apology to Toti Gomez. Hope you enjoy the show. Up the Wolves.